The year is 2011. The month is February. The room smells of stale coffee and old wood. This is the meeting room for the Prairie Grain Cooperative. A long oak table dominates the space, polished to a dull shine by 1,000 forearms. 6 men sit on one side, farmers, board members, men who have known this land their whole lives. On the other side sits a woman, Sarah Jenkins. She is 32 years old. In front of her are 2 stacks of ledger books. One stack is old. The leatherette covers are cracked. The pages are yellowed with age. The ink is a faded blue, written in a careful, looping cursive. The other stack is new. Spiral-bound notebooks from the office supply store. The ink is black. The handwriting is a sharp, efficient print. For 20 minutes, no one has spoken. The only sound is the turning of pages. A man named Frank Miller, the board chairman, stops on a page. His finger traces a line of numbers. Date: October 14th, 2008. Load: 988 bushels of number 2 yellow corn. Moisture reading: her book, 15.1%. Elevator scale ticket moisture, 16.8%. Price paid, $3.85 per bushel. Market price that day, $5.10 per bushel. Frank closes the book. A soft thud in the silent room. He looks at the man at the end of the table, Mr. Henderson, the elevator manager for 40 years. Frank looks at Sarah, and in that moment, he sees not just a young farmer. He sees the 7 years she just laid on the table. 7 years of work. 7 years of quiet accounting. He sees the daughter of a woman he once knew, a woman who also kept meticulous records. This was the same quiet certainty, the same undeniable proof. The man at the end of the table, Mr. Henderson, had once told her something. He told her she couldn't do this alone. He told her he would protect her. He was a good man. Everyone in town said so. He coached Little League for 20 years. He sat on the church council. He had offered her kindness. And that kindness had cost her $212,450 before interest. This channel is for stories like that. Stories about the quiet fights. The ones that don't make the evening news. The ones that are won with logbooks, not lawsuits. With persistence, not protests. If you believe these stories need to be told, if you believe in the power of a single person's quiet resolve, then subscribe to this channel. Because what happened in that room was not the beginning. It was the end of a long, lonely road. And to understand it, we have to go back. We have to go back 7 years, to a day in early spring, to the day Sarah Jenkins buried her father. It was April of 2004. The ground was still cold. A late frost had burned the tips of the new wheat. Sarah stood in the yard of her family's farm. The farm was 640 acres, a full section. Her great-grandfather had bought the first quarter. Her grandfather added the second. Her father, Tom Jenkins, had bought the back half in 1982. He'd paid for it with cash. A point of pride. No debt. That was the family rule. The dirt is yours. No one can take the dirt. Tom Jenkins had a massive heart attack behind the wheel of his John Deere 4440. He was dead before the tractor rolled to a stop against the fence line. He was 58 years old. Sarah was 25. She had a degree in agronomy from the State University. She had worked alongside her father since she was old enough to walk. She knew the land. She knew the work. But the community saw a girl, a young woman alone on a section of land. The whispers started at the funeral luncheon. She'll have to sell. No way she can handle it on her own. A young woman can't run a farm this size. It's too much for her. They weren't being cruel. They were being practical. They were expressing a genuine concern. And that, you see, is the most dangerous kind of doubt. The kind that wears the mask of protection. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who genuinely believed they were looking out for you. By someone who thought they were saving you from failure. Tell us about it in the comments. Because that quiet, kind dismissal is a wall that anger can't break. It can only be dismantled, brick by brick, year by year. 2 weeks after the funeral, Sarah drove the old farm truck into town, a 1988 Chevy C/K 1500. Faded red paint, a small crack in the windshield. She pulled up to the Prairie Grain Cooperative. The elevator loomed over the small town, a monument of corrugated steel and concrete. She walked into the office. The air smelled of dust and sweet feed. Mr. Henderson sat behind a large metal desk. He was a big man, soft around the middle, kind eyes. He'd known her since she was born. He stood up when she came in. "Sarah, I am so sorry about your father. Tom was a good man, one of the best." He said this with real sadness in his voice. She thanked him. She sat down. "I'm here to talk about this year's crop, Mr. Henderson. I'm putting in corn on the north half, soybeans on the south, same as Dad planned. I just wanted to make sure my account is in good order." Henderson leaned back in his chair. The chair squeaked. He tinted his fingers. He looked at her with a gentle, paternal expression. "Sarah, of course. Your family has been doing business here for 50 years. But let's be realistic for a moment. This is a big operation for one person, especially for—" He paused. He didn't want to say it. "For a young woman." He continued. "Have you thought about leasing the land out? Just for a few years. Give yourself time to think things through. You could get good money for it. No risk, no stress." Sarah's hands were steady in her lap. "I'm not leasing it. I'm farming it." Henderson sighed, a soft, disappointed sound. "Okay, Sarah, okay. But you have to understand, the markets are tough right now, volatile. It's a lot to keep track of. Fertilizer costs are up. Fuel is unbelievable. It's a risky business." He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "Let me make a suggestion. You focus on the farming, the planting, the harvesting. You bring your grain here. I'll handle the marketing. I'll give you a fair, flat price, a good price. You won't have to worry about contracts or futures or any of that nonsense. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I won't let anyone take advantage of you." He smiled. It was a kind smile, a protective smile. It was the smile of a man who was absolutely certain he knew what was best for her. Sarah looked at him. She saw the certainty in his eyes. It wasn't malice. It wasn't greed. It was a deep, unshakable belief in her limitations. And she knew, in that moment, that arguing was pointless. You cannot reason with someone's certainty about you. You can only prove it wrong, slowly, painfully, over a very long time. She stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I'll bring the first load in October." She walked out of the office. The bell on the door tinkled behind her. She got in her truck. And for the first time since her father's death, she felt a cold, hard anger. Not at his condescension, but at his kindness. Because she knew that kindness was a cage, and he had just tried to lock her inside it. That night, she couldn't sleep. She went into her father's office, a small room off the kitchen. It smelled like him, coffee and soil. She sat in his chair. She opened the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, and she pulled them out. Her mother's farm ledgers. Eleanor Jenkins had died of cancer when Sarah was 16. She had been the bookkeeper, the strategist, the quiet force behind the farm's success. Her father had always said so. Your mother wasn't just a farmer's wife, she was the farmer's brain. Sarah opened the first book, 1975, the year her parents were married. Her mother's handwriting filled the page, a beautiful, clear script. Every detail was there: seed variety, planting date, rainfall totals, herbicide application rates, yield per acre, test weight, moisture content at harvest, the elevator scale ticket number, the price per bushel, the name of the truck driver, everything. Page after page, year after year, a 30-year history of the farm, written in blue ink. Sarah stayed up all night, reading the story of her own life, told in numbers and yields. She saw the drought of '88, the flood of '93. She saw the year her father bought the back half section, cash. Her mother had underlined the word. She saw the meticulous notes on grain marketing, phone calls to 3 different elevators, getting bids, playing them off each other, holding grain in their own bins until the basis improved in January. Her mother hadn't just accepted a price, she had commanded one. Sarah found an empty notebook in the desk drawer, a black and white composition book. She opened it to the first page. She wrote the date, April 22nd, 2004. At the top of the page, she wrote a heading, Harvest, 2004. She would continue the tradition. She would honor the data. The dirt is enough, her father used to say, but her mother's books told a different story. The dirt is the start, the data is the victory. Let me tell you about the next 7 years, because this is where the story becomes more than just a story. It becomes a testament. In the fall of 2004, Sarah harvested 165 bushels per acre of corn, a very good yield. Her father would have been proud. She hauled it to the co-op, load after load in the old Chevy truck. Mr. Henderson was true to his word. He was kind. He was helpful. He always had a smile for her. Sarah, this is a good-looking crop. Your dad taught you well. He paid her $2.10 a bushel. The market was down, he said. A lot of supply this year. She wrote it in her book. The yield, the scale ticket numbers, the price. She drove home feeling a knot in her stomach. It felt low, but she had no proof, only a feeling. And a feeling is not data. 2005, soybeans. She harvested 55 bushels to the acre, a bin buster. She hauled it to the co-op. Mr. Henderson beamed. You're a natural at this, Sarah. He paid her $5.40 a bushel. He explained the complex reasons for the price. South American competition, weak export demand. It all sounded plausible. She wrote it in her book. She went home. She bought her first piece of equipment, a used Dickie John Mini GAC portable moisture tester. It cost her $300 at a farm auction, cash. It was old, but it worked. She started testing every load herself, before it left the farm. She wrote the numbers in her book. 2006, corn again, a dry year. The yield was only 140 bushels per acre. She hauled it to town. Mr. Henderson was sympathetic. Tough year, Sarah. Don't you worry. I'll give you the best price I can. He docked her on several loads for high moisture. 17%, he said. Too wet. Gotta charge you for drying. Her own tester had read 15.4%, a full 1.5 difference. That was the first time. The first time she had a number that contradicted his. She didn't say anything. It wasn't time. One data point is an anomaly. You need a pattern. She wrote it all down in her book. His number, her number, the difference, the dockage fee. That winter, she didn't buy a new TV. She didn't take a vacation. She took the profits from the farm, and she bought 2 used grain bins, 10,000 bushel capacity each. She paid a local crew to set them up on a concrete pad behind the barn. Cash. Now she had a choice. Now she didn't have to sell off the combine. She could store her grain. She could wait. The neighbors noticed the bins. Tom Miller, who farmed the section to her west, stopped by. "Putting up storage, Sarah? That's a big expense." She nodded, figured it was time. He shook his head. "Henderson gives a fair price, always has. Seems like a lot of hassle just to chase a few extra cents." He was a good neighbor. He meant well. He was repeating the conventional wisdom. Trust the co-op. Trust the manager. It's what everyone did. Sarah just smiled. "I like to have my options open." 2007. A perfect year. The rain came at the right times. The heat was steady. She pulled 180 bushels of corn per acre, a farm record. She filled her 2 new bins, 20,000 bushels. She took the rest to the co-op, about half her crop. Mr. Henderson seemed surprised. "Putting some in your own storage? Good for you, Sarah. Playing the markets a little." He said it with a smile, but his eyes were cool. He tested her loads, always a little wetter than her own tester showed, always a little lighter on the test weight, just enough to dock her a few cents here, a few cents there. It added up. She wrote it all down. In January of 2008, the price of corn spiked. A big ethanol plant had come online 2 counties over. Demand was high. Sarah made a phone call, not to Henderson, to a different elevator, 30 miles away. She got a bid. It was $1.30 a bushel higher than the price Henderson had paid her in the fall. She hired a local trucker. She sold the 20,000 bushels from her bins. The check that came in the mail was stunning. It was life-changing money. It was proof. Proof that Henderson's protection was a prison. His fair price was a lie. Not a loud lie, a quiet one. A gentle, paternal lie, told with a kind smile. The worst kind of lie there is. This is the part of the story that matters most. The quiet, unseen work. Have you ever had to build your own system? Because the existing one was designed to exclude you. Have you ever had to count and measure and document just to prove you deserve what you've already earned? Let us know. Your story is part of this story. Because what Sarah did next wasn't just for her, it was for everyone who came after. The money from that grain sale changed everything. Let me tell you about the expansion. It happened slowly, then all at once. Winter 2008, she bought 2 more grain bins, brand new, GSI, 25,000 bushel capacity each, cash. She bought a brand new grain auger, a Westfield MKX 1384, cash. She now had 70,000 bushels of on-farm storage, enough for her entire crop. She didn't have to sell a single bushel to Henderson if she didn't want to. Freedom. That's what it looked like. Corrugated steel shining in the winter sun. 2008. Soybeans. She harvested 60 bushels to the acre. Another farm record. She filled her bins. She sold a few loads to the distant elevator, just for cash flow. She didn't go to the Prairie Grain Co-op at all. Not once. Mr. Henderson saw her at the grocery store. "Sarah, haven't seen you this fall. Everything all right?" She smiled. "Everything is fine, Mr. Henderson. Just busy." He knew. He had to know. He would have seen the trucks turning off the highway, going to her farm, not to his elevator. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not anger, not contempt. Something softer. And in some ways, worse. It was confusion. The look of a man whose certainty had been challenged. He couldn't understand why his protection was no longer wanted. 2009, corn, 175 bushels per acre. She stored it all. She bought a new moisture tester, a Purton AM5200-A, the same model the grain elevators used, certified, legal for trade. It cost $7,000, cash. Now her data was unimpeachable. Now her numbers were as good as his. Better, in fact. Because her numbers didn't have a motive. They were just the truth. 2010, soybeans. A wet fall. Harvest was a struggle. The beans came out of the field at 18% moisture. Too wet to store. She needed a dryer. She didn't have one. She had no choice. She had to haul them to the co-op. She had to go back to Mr. Henderson. She pulled onto the scale. Her first time in 3 years. He came out of the office himself. He didn't smile. Sarah. He said her name like a question. Mr. Henderson, I've got some wet beans. He nodded, climbed up the side of the truck, pulled a sample, took it inside. She waited. The knot was back in her stomach. He came out a few minutes later, holding the scale ticket. 19.5% moisture, he said. Heavy dockage, and the test weight is low. He handed her the ticket. She looked at it. Then she reached into her own truck and pulled out her own sample bag from the same load and her own moisture tester receipt. She had tested it right before she left the farm. The paper was still warm. It read 17.8%. She held it out to him. My tester says you're wrong. The air grew thick. The sounds of the elevator, the hum of the fans, the rattle of the grain leg seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, staring at two pieces of paper, telling two different stories. Henderson looked at her printout. He looked at his. He looked at her. And for the first time, the kind, paternal mask slipped. He saw the woman in front of him, not the girl he thought he was protecting, but a farmer, an equal, and a threat. He spoke. His voice was quiet. My equipment is calibrated by the state, Sarah. This is the official number. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just nodded. Okay. She took her ticket, dumped the load, and drove away. But she knew. It was time. She had the pattern. 7 years of patterns. 7 years of his numbers and her numbers. 7 years of his kindness and her reality. The data was complete. That winter she did the work. She spent every evening at the kitchen table. Her mother's ledgers on the left, her own notebooks on the right, a calculator, a laptop with historical market data. She built a spreadsheet. Every single load of grain she had ever sold to him. For 7 years. She entered the date, the commodity, the bushels, her moisture reading, his moisture reading, the discrepancy, the dockage he charged, the market price on that day, the price he paid her, the difference. Line by line, load by load. The numbers piled up. The quiet theft became a roar. It wasn't a few cents here and there. It was a system, a consistent, deliberate underpayment, hidden behind a smile, hidden behind the language of protection. The average was $1.20 a bushel. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but it averaged out. For 7 years. On over 177,000 bushels of grain. The final number on the spreadsheet made her feel sick. $212,450. A staggering amount. Enough to buy land. Enough to build a house. Enough to secure her future. It was the cost of being underestimated. The price of being protected. She printed out the spreadsheet. She closed the laptops. She stacked her mother's books. She stacked her own. She made a phone call to Frank Miller, the chairman of the co-op board. She said, Frank, we need to have a meeting, and I need you to bring the whole board. and I need Mr. Henderson to be there." There was a silence on the other end of the line. Then Frank, who had known her father well, said one word: "When?" Which brings us back to that room. The long oak table, the stale coffee, the 6 men looking at the books. Mr. Henderson sat at the end of the table. His face was pale. He looked shrunken in his chair. Frank Miller slid the top ledger across the table. It was one of her mother's, from 1998. He tapped a page. Howard. That's what he called him. Howard. "This is Eleanor Jenkins's book. Look at this entry. She's got you down for underreporting test weight on a load of wheat." She made a note. Spoke to Howard. He adjusted the ticket. Said it was a calibration error. Frank looked up. His eyes were hard. "It seems you've been making calibration errors for a very long time." Henderson didn't speak. He just stared at the familiar cursive. A ghost from the past. A voice of quiet accounting he had forgotten. Frank turned to Sarah. His voice was softer now. "Sarah, what do you want us to do?" And here is the moment. The quiet devastation. The protagonist's simple, factual statement that reframes everything. Sarah could have yelled. She could have demanded he be fired. She could have threatened to sue. She didn't. She looked directly at Mr. Henderson, the man who had promised to protect her, the man whose kindness had been a weapon. And she said, her voice clear and steady, "I want you to look at my books, and I want you to look at yours, and I want you to write me a check for the difference." That was all. No anger, no triumph, just the facts, just the data, just the truth. Then she added one more thing. She looked at all the men in the room, and she said, "You told me you were protecting me. All of you. You all thought I couldn't do it. You felt sorry for the poor girl who lost her dad. Your protection cost me over $200,000. I don't want your protection. I want you to see me as a farmer, nothing more, nothing less." The room was silent, absolutely silent. In that moment, they didn't see a girl. They saw Tom Jenkins's daughter. They saw Eleanor Jenkins's legacy. They saw one of the sharpest operators in the county, and they were ashamed. The story doesn't end there, because a legacy is not about winning a single victory. It's about what you build from it. The co-op board forced Howard Henderson into retirement. Quietly. No scandal, just a party with a gold watch and a sheet cake. They wrote Sarah a check for the full amount, plus 7 years of interest calculated at 5%. The total was $254,940. She put it in the bank. She didn't buy anything, not at first. The money wasn't the point. The truth was the point. The next year, something new started in the county. A Saturday morning workshop, held in the winter during the slow season. It was called Know Your Numbers. It was run by Sarah Jenkins. The first year, only 5 people showed up, all women, farmers or wives of farmers. Sarah stood in front of them in the community hall. She had her mother's logbooks on the table. She didn't talk about Henderson. She didn't talk about the co-op. She talked about data. She taught them how to use a moisture tester, how to read a basis report, how to calculate storage costs, how to track their own numbers. She gave each of them a blank ledger book. At the end of the first class, a woman came up to her. She was older than Sarah. She'd been farming with her husband for 30 years. She said, her voice trembling slightly, "I always thought I was just helping him. You made me realize I'm a partner. My numbers matter too." The workshop grew. The next year there were 20 people. Some of them were men, young farmers just starting out. They had heard the story, the quiet legend of Sarah Jenkins and her logbooks. They wanted to learn. By 2015, The Jenkins method was a local term. It meant meticulous, independent record-keeping. It meant trusting your own data first. Young farmers started showing up at the elevator, any elevator, with a clipboard and their own moisture reading. They would stand and watch the scales. They would ask for the printouts. They were polite, but they were certain. The entire culture of the grain business in that county began to shift, from a system based on trust to a system based on verification. Sarah Jenkins had not just fixed a problem for herself. She had changed the system for everyone. That is the legacy. Today, the Prairie Grain Cooperative has a new manager, a young woman with a degree in agribusiness. On the wall of her office, there is a framed photo. It's a picture of Eleanor Jenkins, Sarah's mother. The board put it there, a reminder, a promise, to see every farmer, to respect the data, to never again offer protection when what is needed is an equal playing field. On the Jenkins farm, there is a new generation. Sarah has a daughter. Her name is Eleanor. She is 10 years old. Sometimes on a winter evening, they will sit at the kitchen table, and Sarah will pull out the old logbooks, the ones with the faded blue ink. She will show her daughter the looping cursive. She will show her the numbers, the history of their land, the story of their family. Her daughter will trace the letters with her small finger. "This is Grandma's book," she will say. "Yes," Sarah will answer. This is how we know who we are. The logbook sits on the shelf in the farm office, a physical artifact, a testament, proof that the quietest voice can speak the loudest truth, if it has the data to back it up. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told they can't. Someone is being offered protection that is actually a cage. Someone is being underestimated by a person who thinks they are being kind. Certainty about another person's capabilities is a poison. It can't be fought with anger. It can only be disproven, with work, with facts, with decades of quiet, relentless competence. Sarah Jenkins's story is not just about grain. It's about the fundamental right to be seen as capable, to be dealt with as an equal, to have your own numbers trusted. Her fight was lonely. It took 7 years. But her victory belongs to everyone who has ever been told, "Let me handle that for you." If this story means something to you, if you believe in the power of quiet truth, subscribe to this channel. There are more stories like this one that need to be told. Comment below with a time you had to prove someone wrong, not with an argument, but with your results. And share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be in their own quiet fight. Someone who needs to be reminded that the data will set you free.